Well, greetings, fellow investors. Noir here. It's a brand new year, so this is the perfect time to go over some new brands. This week's sleeper blue chip stock... Huh? What do you mean I don't look right? This is how I've always looked. Anyway, let's get right down to talking about those stocks. What's that? You want me to talk about video games? That's crazy. Everyone knows only children and unemployed people play video games. I've got more important things to do, like making YouTube videos about how to churn worthless commodity holdings into high ROI short-term certificates of debenture. I'm a businessman. Sorry, say that again? You think I'm not a man? You think I'm a coffee cup? Well, of all the ridiculous... Okay, look, maybe I do have a slightly odd-shaped head. And yes, my nose does look kind of weird, thanks for reminding me. But calling me a friggin' coffee cup is going a little far, don't you think? What's that? Coffee on my head? That's not coffee, it's my hair. Geez, talk about judgmental. I guess everybody where you come from is a supermodel, right? Look, my personal appearance isn't the important thing here. What is important is your portfolio, and what we can do with it if you'll just... Shh! Don't blow this for me. I'm in the middle of something that could revolutionize this channel. Will you hold on, folks? I just need to have a private conversation here for a sec. Don't forget to like and subscribe. What are you doing? I had the meeting out of the palm of my hand. Can't you see what's going on here? Well, I'll spell it out for you. Video game channels are laying an egg on YouTube. Nobody watches them anymore. They're yesterday's news. So I'm just finessing my content into something a little more suited to the tastes of today's savvy electronic media consumer. It's called marketing. Maybe. Not when I delete them. This is a fresh start for Noir. A blank slate. Limitless opportunities. Well, if they really care about me, then they should be willing to stick with me, right? And anyway, whether they like it or not, it doesn't really matter, because from now on, I'm not going to allow comments. Oh yeah. Who cares what my viewers have to say? Half the time, they're just insulting me. Let's be honest, all those comments on my old videos were just holding me back. Once I've got my new content set up, the views and likes are going to flood in, and for every old viewer who gets pissed off at me, there'll be 10 new ones who are just here for the stock reviews and don't care how I run this channel. It'll be amazing. Oh yeah? And who would that be exactly? Huh? Why does he look so weird? Man, why did no one ever tell me my nose was this big? Hey there, me? So I heard that you've decided to ditch your old content and pretend like it never existed. I'm not sure why you're doing this. Maybe you're frustrated at not getting the success you think you deserve after putting years of effort into your channel. Maybe you're bored with the stuff you used to talk about and want to move on to greener pastures. Or maybe you're just mad at all those people who said you're stupid and your content sucks. I get it. Nobody likes getting hate. Nobody likes putting hours of their life into content just to see it get picked apart by people who despise you. Nobody likes being a nobody. But Cinnamon, the truth is that your persona and your content aren't 100% yours to throw away whenever you want to. You shared them with the world, and now there are other people who have a stake in them. You can't get rid of those other people, and you can't erase their memories either. When you say you want to start over, you're talking about taking a shortcut that means stepping over the people who like your channel, the viewers who should mean the most to you. I know what you're going to say, but lots of other people have done it. And sure they have, but if you saw a million people jump off a cliff, would you want to follow in their footsteps? No matter who you are, trying to deny your own past and pretend to be something you're not is a mistake. And today, just to show you what you're letting yourself in for, we're going to talk about all the mistakes YouTubers have made in trying to force other people to see them a certain way, which, when you get right down to it, is impossible. So this is actually a topic I've been thinking about for some time, but what really pushed me into making this video was, what a surprise, a boneheaded PR move made by the people who run YouTube. Late last year, the YouTube team decided that they were going to hide the dislike count for all videos on the site. For the last several months, people have been able to see your videos, your comments, and your likes if you let them, but YouTube will not even let you let your viewers see how many people downvoted your video. As usual, YouTube claimed that this change was based on feedback from smaller creators. According to them, the primary motivation behind this change was to thwart dislike mobs, who invade controversial videos and deliberately downvote them en masse without even watching them. More cynical observers, on the other hand, have noted that a large proportion of the most downvoted videos on the site come from international corporations, media institutions, and YouTube itself, suggesting that the real reason for removing dislikes is that the feature often makes YouTube and its advertising partners look bad. Frankly, though, I don't care what YouTube's motives are in this case. Even assuming that they're pure as the driven snow, removing dislikes is a misguided approach that won't solve any of the real problems affecting content creators on this platform. This is a quick and dirty fix that may make some creators happier in the short run, but which will ultimately drive people away from the content they produce. But another reason why YouTube's motives don't mean much to me is that I'm more worried about the motives of the creators, and I find it hard to believe that YouTube's feature tinkering, as heavy-handed as it is, could possibly hurt them more than some of them have already hurt themselves. The fact is, even before this latest change, YouTube already offered content creators many opportunities to screw themselves and their audiences over, and far too many of those content creators have leapt at the chance to do so. To many YouTubers, practices like disabling negative feedback, hiding their older content, and radically changing the content and tone of their videos seem like ways to create a refuge for themselves, a space where they can get away from all the hassle and emotional pain that goes along with having a presence on the internet. The problem is, this isn't a refuge, it's a prison. A cozy and inviting prison, to be sure, but a prison all the same. Doing things this way doesn't magically provide you with an audience that gets you and gives you unconditional support. Instead, it drives away most of your real audience and leaves you with only the most diehard fans. And since most people don't have diehard fans to begin with, it leaves most people talking to no one at all. I don't want that to happen to anybody, least of all myself. In fact, the desire to avoid this outcome is behind a lot of my decisions about how I run this channel. It's why I don't unlist my old videos, even when they get a lot of hate. It's why I usually don't delete comments, even the really brutal and insulting ones. And it's why I've stuck with my original avatar and style of content, even though, let's be honest, the whole thing is a bit silly. If you've ever wondered why I make decisions about my content that sometimes seem counterintuitive, this video will explain why. And if, like me, you suspect that some of your favorite content creators have an unhealthy relationship with their audience, one that seems to be built on idol worship rather than mutual trust and respect, I hope to be able to shed some light on that subject too. We'll begin with arguably the most justifiable of these maneuvers, changing your content and style to chase after popularity. In my decade plus of watching videos on YouTube, I've often observed a particular trajectory that content creators, particularly the really specialized ones, tend to follow. They'll spend several years making videos on a certain topic, video games for instance, and amass a substantial following as a result. But then, seemingly just as their content is reaching a consistent level of quality, they'll either get burned out and quit YouTube completely, or they'll abandon the topic they started with and start talking about something else. Content creators like Anthony Fantano and Yahtzee Croshaw, who've spent more than a decade covering the same subject, and arguably become experts by doing so, are actually in the minority when it comes to YouTube channels, even the really popular ones. Obviously, people who are celebrities outside the social media world, like Justin Bieber or something, also have consistent content. But for people whose reputations come solely from their YouTube presence, major stylistic changes are the rule and not the exception. Jimmy Donaldson, aka Mr. Beast, started his channel with Minecraft Let's Plays and wealth analyses of other channels, and today he's best known for absurd stunts and making it rain on random people. Jack Douglas used to make 2-minute parodies of infomercial products. Now he spends 15 hours a day riffing his own audience on Twitter. JonTron originally made his reputation discussing old weird video games, and he spent the last 5 years stealing VHS tapes from Red Letter Media and critiquing Gwyneth Paltrow's organic fairy dust ointment. Also, at some point, Dunkey's content actually started making sense. Now, there's technically nothing wrong with all this. Variety is the spice of life, as they say, and I'd be the last person to suggest that YouTubers aren't allowed to branch out into other subjects, which is a rule that, if followed consistently, would have prevented a lot of my favorite content from being made, and also the video you're watching right now. I think it does become a problem, though, when the change is motivated by something other than intellectual curiosity, something like, for instance, money. The fact is that some topics are always going to appeal more to general audiences than others, and as a result are going to be more lucrative. Fashion will likely bring you more of an audience than computer science. Movie reviews are a bigger draw than game reviews. And YouTube drama is more appealing and certainly less controversial than actual history. Certain video formats are also more likely to bring you financial success. Upload a 15-minute video of you chatting over Fortnite footage 3 times a week, and if the subject you're discussing is trendy, you're virtually guaranteed to make more money than if you spend an equivalent amount of effort making a well-researched, in-depth 30-minute video every month. Please note that this is not a guarantee that you'll make any money at all doing either of these. 10 times 0 is still 0. YouTubers tend to figure this dynamic out pretty quickly, and while many of them have good reasons for not making their content more algorithm-friendly, the temptation to do so is always there, especially when they desperately want to make content for a living. The prospect of working your butt off to make great, unique videos, and then see them stagnate because people are watching tossed-off trash all day long, can make a content creator extremely nervous, not to mention a little angry. And all the while there's this insidious little demon on your shoulder whispering, "You should be making this kind of content, and then you would get all that money and attention." There are 2 YouTubers in particular who I've noticed struggling with this in the past several years, Arlo and Quentin Reviews. Both of these channels are currently active and successful, and both of them radically changed their style and upload schedule at around the same time several years ago. Although they both cover more or less the same subjects they used to, in Arlo's case video games and in Quentin's children's TV shows, in terms of approach their channels are practically unrecognizable from how they began. For the first couple of years, Arlo's channel was mostly video game reviews, with maybe 1 out of every 5 being a general commentary on the industry or a news update. Since mid-2017, shortly after the launch of the Nintendo Switch, that ratio has been pretty much inverted. His channel is now mostly devoted to commentary on gaming news, and even commentary on non-news, with reviews taking a backseat. He's leaned heavily into hype culture, and now spends a lot more time talking about games before they come out than after. His upload rate is also much faster than it used to be, with videos coming out several times a week most of the time, while in the early days he would often upload once a week or even less often. I'm not going to go into what this has done to his content, partly because I've already whined about that in previous videos, but it's worth noting what this schedule has done to Arlo himself. To be frank, from hearing him talk about it, running the channel has become every bit as stressful and exhausting as a real job, if not substantially more. Keeping up with the never-ending industry hype train, as well as dealing with a large and active fan base that has very specific ideas about what kind of content it wants to see, has clearly taken a huge toll on him. He's said so many times, particularly when he's had to go on hiatus for a while just to clear the fog from his head so he can face the next video with confidence. Now, I could certainly say that these are problems you want to have, the problems that are bound to come with success. But honestly, Arlo did not have to run himself ragged and mass-produce videos in order to be prominent on YouTube. After all, he was well on his way to popularity before he started uploading like this, and he could have been a modest success in any case. But the key word there is modest. Modest success in YouTube terms means 80,000 subscribers and a Patreon that pays you $10,000 a year. It's not a substitute for a real job, and unless you're a survivalist who eats rice and beans 3 meals a day, it won't be enough to financially support you. For Arlo, that just wasn't enough. He wanted to do YouTube full-time, and to do that, you more or less have to turn yourself into a brand, a marketable figure who can attract sponsorship deals, sell merchandise, and retain a large and loyal audience. But in the process of turning yourself into a brand, you more or less lose the real person behind it. And after a while, that's something you can't put back into the channel, for fear that it might clash with the commercially successful image you've created. In the case of Quentin Reviews, this is even more obvious. I suspect that Arlo deliberately abandoned his original approach, not because he didn't like it, but because a different one would make his channel more successful. But in Quentin's case, I know he did this, because he's said so. Now, Quentin doesn't upload constantly the way Arlo does, but nevertheless his approach has morphed since the humble early days of his channel. In Quentin's case, by making much longer, think-piece-style videos, and injecting a considerable amount of political and social commentary into his discussions of children's television shows. I'm not going to get into the question of whether or not Quentin was right to do this. I have my own opinions on the subject, but he's far from the only content creator to have done it. And anyway, I'm far more interested at present in what kind of effect this approach has had on Quentin's outlook and overall enjoyment of his work. And the answer, as far as I can tell, is, well, quite a negative effect, actually. The first word that would spring to mind in describing the Quentin of 4 years ago would be quirky. If I did the same for recent Quentin, it would be mopey. The impression Quentin often gives off on social media, and even in his videos, is that of a depressed loner who can't relate to most of the people he meets. Because his brand is so associated with politics these days, rather than the actual subjects of his videos, there's no uncontroversial glue that holds his audience together. How can his viewers feel good about his content when he spends so much time talking about things that make him feel miserable? His shift away from lighthearted humor and toward political punditry has certainly attracted a large audience, but it's not a friendly or supportive one. Instead, it's composed of rigid ideologues who praise him only when he's 100% on target and excoriate him when he makes the slightest mistake. It's also earned him a larger-than-average portion of mockery from those who disagree with him on these issues, people who would never even have identified him as a hate figure if he hadn't been so insistent about sharing his political opinions at the slightest provocation. One thing that you should remember is that no matter how small your channel is, you'll always have some kind of brand and an audience associated with it. Making massive changes to your content may gain you a new audience, but it could also easily cost you those hard-earned fans who discovered you before. Obviously, the riskiness of branching out depends on how varied your content was to start with. If you already have a reputation for variety, there's no harm in continuing to experiment with different types of content. I'm personally aware of many channels that have covered several different subjects from the very beginning, or where the whole point was experimentation, and the kind of audience that's attracted to that won't complain when you give them more of what they subscribe to you for. But what if you're well known for a very specific type of video, and you really want to try something new? Well, my suggestion is to start a new channel. This keeps your old brand intact while also opening up new possibilities. And even if you never make another video on your old channel after starting the new one, it'll still feel less like a betrayal to your old fans than trying to revamp your original channel's image. Frankly, though, the harm you can cause to your channel by trying something new, especially if you're passionate about it and willing to put in the work to make it interesting, is pretty minimal. There are much worse things you can do to alienate your audience and potentially flush your whole social media presence down the drain. For instance, every YouTube channel that goes on for any length of time will undergo a process of evolution, generally for the better as the content creator becomes more skilled at producing videos and more comfortable talking in public, as it were. What this means for most channels is that your current videos are going to make you look cooler, funnier, and better informed than the stuff you made years ago. My degree of success on YouTube has been tiny by any measure, but even I've experienced this. When I go back and watch my earliest videos, they're honestly a little embarrassing. It's not that I disagree with anything I said back then, but the way I said it left a lot to be desired, especially in terms of structure and visual design. And I'm actually one of the lucky ones. Many content creators actually regret the content of their past videos, not just the window dressing that surrounds it. Maybe their political opinions have radically changed since they were young, or they find certain kinds of humor less charming than they used to, or maybe they even said something that they later found out was objectively incorrect. This can be a huge blow to your online presence. We all make juvenile mistakes, but most of us are fortunate enough to not leave video evidence lying around that reminds everybody of it. For both personal and professional reasons, YouTubers don't want their audience to associate them with incompetence and stupidity. So it should come as no surprise that one of the most popular approaches to this problem is to just get rid of the evidence. Delete the videos that make you look bad, and you won't look bad anymore. That's the theory, and from a logical standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. The trouble is that it leaves out a lot of details that complicate the situation. First off, there's no guarantee that deleting a video will actually remove it from the public consciousness, particularly if you have a large and successful channel. Viewers copy and re-upload videos all the time, especially controversial ones, and even more especially the ones that creators try to hide. More importantly, there's one place you can't erase the video from at all, and that's your audience's memory. In today's soundbite-driven media landscape, it would be easy to think that people barely remember last week, let alone your years-old videos. But the capacity of the human memory can often surprise you. Both people who liked the content you took down and the people who violently disagreed with you are likely to remember the general gist of what you said, no matter how hard you try to obliterate it. In fact, this move might actually be more dangerous to your reputation, because in the absence of the original video, your viewers will try to fill in the gaps of what they remember, and they'll judge you not by what you said, but by what they think you said, which is often a more extreme version of the truth. Also, when you choose to delete a piece of content that you're unhappy with, you're not just getting rid of the original message, you're also sending a new one by the very act of deleting it. Trying to eliminate the evidence of your past statements tells people that you're self-conscious, and maybe even afraid of your audience. In a metaphorical sense, it makes you look guilty of whatever charge you're trying to refute. It's a retreat and a sign of weakness. That being said, some particularly bad decisions do call for a retreat. If you've made yourself look like an idiot, you have to clear the air and let people know that you regret doing it. But to adapt a concept from military history, there's a difference between a retreat and a rout. A retreat is a careful and organized departure from a position that you can't possibly hold. It stems from a recognition that to stay where you are is deadly, and that long-term success depends on your moving away from it. It is possible to retreat from a situation with most of your strength intact. The evacuation of Dunkirk during World War II is considered a strategic success to this day for exactly that reason. The battle had already been lost, but the army was saved. A rout, on the other hand, is a retreat that dissolves into total chaos because of poor management or extreme fear and stress. A rout is psychologically almost the same thing as surrendering, and the more anxious you are about your image, the more likely it is that you'll fall to pieces over it. I personally choose to keep all my old videos up, even though I know they're not that good. None of them make me ashamed, and I think my audience deserves to know the real me, warts and all. I also trust that people who watch my videos will give me the benefit of the doubt, and not assume that I'm a total jerk because I said one thing they didn't like 5 years ago. Does this mean you shouldn't ever delete a video? Not necessarily, but it's something that should be done at the right moment and in the right way. And if you have a video that you're concerned about, whether or not you choose to delete it, the honest thing to do is to make another video explaining your decision to your audience. If you leave the old video up, the new video can act as a disclaimer to let your audience know that your opinions have changed. If you take the old one down, the new one will take its place and make your feelings on the original subject clear. This is what Arlo did when he took down his video on Hey Pikmin, and in my opinion it was a very smart move. He didn't try to hide the fact that the game's trailer had rubbed him the wrong way, and he explained why the original video didn't fit in with the rest of his content. I wasn't happy with his decision, but if he had tried to pretend like the original video never existed, he would have lost my respect as well. Having already decided to take down the video, he made the right choice. Although I should point out that someone else re-uploaded that video almost immediately, and it's still viewable on YouTube to this day. Like I said before, you can't guarantee that videos will stay deleted. The fact is, neither changing your content nor getting rid of the old content will guarantee that you get the kind of attention you want. You can choose how to present yourself, but you can't choose how other people see you, especially if they knew you before the change. However, one thing I will say for both of these moves is that the worst they can do is drive away an audience you've already built. There's another form of image control that's common on YouTube, in my opinion the worst of them all, because it can potentially keep you from ever building an audience in the first place. This is what can happen when you try to shut up not your past self, but your current audience. And this brings us back to YouTube's decision to hide dislikes in all videos across the platform. This decision generated a lot of controversy when it was revealed, but as with just about everything that happens to YouTube, after a while everybody settled down and just started living with it. We make jokes about it in the comments, we grumble about it on other platforms, but we never seem to get worked up about it enough to actually do anything about it. This complacency is a huge mistake. Hiding dislikes, in fact hiding any form of sincere viewer feedback, is slow poison. It's not ever going to make things easier for smaller channels. In fact, its primary effect is going to be to prevent smaller channels from growing and becoming successful. And here's why. Every YouTube channel is a network of long-distance relationships between a single creator and many different viewers. It's called a social media platform because there's communication between the various points in the web. There's a kind of society that emerges based around the content that's uploaded. The vibrancy of this society depends upon two-way communication, just as real society does. When you meet people in your day-to-day existence, you talk to them and they talk to you. This is how people form friendships, romantic attachments, business partnerships, and every other thing that life depends on. If most of the people you met on a daily basis never spoke, just sat and listened while you lectured to them, your life would be a lot more boring and joyless than it is. But that's exactly the kind of existence that content creators make for themselves when they disallow comments, hide likes and dislikes, and do anything else aimed at shutting up their audience. When the communication is all one way, your viewers might put up with it for a while, or at least some of them will, but it weighs on them and makes it so much harder for them to care about what you have to say. It's a constant reminder to them that you don't value or respect the opinions of people who watch your videos, and only very lonely or damaged listeners will patiently sit through this kind of treatment. This is why so many people who have disallowed comments and likes on their channels have seen their audiences shrink to nothing. The people who used to watch them have moved on to someone else who'll treat them better. But wait, you say, now that YouTube has hidden dislikes for everybody, my viewers won't have any choice, right? It's the best of both worlds. I don't have to put up with mean viewers, and people will still watch me. It's certainly true that now viewers can't escape to a place on YouTube where their dislikes will actually be noticed. But if you think this stops them from being hurt by it, you're dead wrong. This one-size-fits-all approach just means that now everyone on YouTube is more disengaged from the platform as a whole. The annoyance at specific content creators, who are too arrogant to accept criticism, has been replaced by a generalized malaise, now that YouTube is a place where you have to fake a smile regardless of how you feel, where negativity is treated as a crime rather than a symptom of bad content, where channel owners both big and small can do awful things and not have to worry about looking bad because of them. YouTube's short-sighted actions have taken what was once a social network and turned it into a parasocial network. Content creators are discouraged from actually interacting with their own viewers. Instead, the viewers are expected to sit back and shut up while the important people talk at them. Big channels are turning into personality cults where only gushing, supportive feedback is welcome. And small channels are isolating themselves by refusing to take feedback that could make their content better. The popular are getting more popular, and the obscure are getting more obscure than ever. YouTube was originally conceived as a novel combination of a repository for video content and a forum where that content would be discussed. Since the beginning of the internet, there have been spaces for fans to discuss TV, movies, and video games. What made YouTube special was that through the comment section and ratings, both the content creators and the content consumers would share their thoughts. To this day, that's the only thing that really makes YouTube any different from TV or streaming platforms. It's the reason why YouTube content is so different and so engaging. Yet YouTube's management has been hacking away at this foundational principle for years. YouTube's original slogan was, "Broadcast yourself," and this message was aimed at everybody, not just the content creators, and certainly not just the rich and famous content creators. Back then, YouTube was a small, feisty company that had a lot in common with the kind of people who used it. Now YouTube is part of a massive internet conglomerate, but its users are the same ordinary scrubs we always were, and the disconnect is starting to become glaringly obvious. Why did YouTube really choose to hide dislikes from public view? I incline to the more cynical interpretation. It was because some of the most publicly hated and mocked videos in YouTube's history come from the company's own management. YouTube is, in its own way, a content creator. A big, important, arrogant, thin-skinned, and elitist content creator that can't form a real connection with its own audience because it doesn't respect the members of that audience. And what they're doing with these changes is trying to make you just like them. YouTube has no interest in what its users have to say, so it thinks you should emulate their example and stop caring what your viewers have to say. YouTube is repulsed by criticism and obsessed with shallow trends, so it thinks you should be as well. And YouTube hates comments and dislikes, so they want you to believe that mean comments and dislike mobs are ruining your life, when the truth is that the same relationship network that opens you up to mean comments and dislikes also sends you the positive, uplifting comments and the feedback that makes content worth creating in the first place. You can't have a real conversation without taking the risk that someone will say something you don't like. And if you try hard and say something interesting, the positivity that you get from viewer feedback is almost certain to outweigh the negativity. I'm one of the least talented YouTubers I've ever known, and this is true even for me. Think about that for a second. I think that the health of your channel depends on free and open communication between you and your audience. If someone is downright nasty or posts spam and gibberish that takes space away from valuable conversation, by all means get rid of that kind of feedback. But while you're doing so, remember that not all criticisms are meant as insults, and that what you say often sounds just as rude to other people as their comments do to you. Give your commenters the benefit of the doubt. Don't hide your true self to keep it away from them. Don't spend all your time trying to be trendy or popular so they'll like you. And above all, don't slap a muzzle on them and expect them to like it. That's what you can do for yourself. And what about the decisions YouTube has made as a company? Well, if they really want to throttle the forum aspect of this platform and turn the video sharing side into a second-rate imitation of cable TV, you can't stop them. What you can do is use the communication tools you still have to share information with your audience that you think they should know. Which is exactly what I intend to do. One idea for circumventing the hidden dislikes, which came up soon after the change was made, was to make a comment stand in for the dislike bar, i.e. like the comment to show that you dislike the video. The trouble with that is that there's no guarantee people will see the dislike comment. It might get buried under other comments actually discussing the content, especially if relatively few people in the audience actually care about this issue. I have my own wrinkle on this approach. Every video can have a pinned comment from the creator that appears above all the rest. I don't use this function on most of my videos, so I can adapt it to be a new dislike bar. For every video, I'll make a pinned comment telling you how many dislikes it has. Remember that you can still dislike videos, it's just that there's no public dislike counter. I'll review the dislikes every few months or so to make sure they're current, so don't hesitate to hit the dislike button if you don't like what you see. Now you might be asking, why would I do this? Am I some kind of masochist who enjoys being criticized? Why would I want to make sure that people can see how ratioed my videos on Matthew Matosis are, when I could let them think that everybody who watches my videos loves me? The truth is that I don't enjoy criticism. It can really sting. But in the long run, I think criticism is good for me. It tells me what people like and dislike about my content. It steers me away from making big mistakes. Most of all, it keeps me humble. And with all the relentless fake positivity of modern social media, a bit of grounding is welcome as a contrast. I value honesty more than almost anything else, and if YouTube wants to stand in the way of that, I'm going to do everything I can to push them over. Of course, it's also true that you have no guarantee that I'll be honest in sharing my dislikes with you. Since YouTube took the public count away, I won't be able to prove that these numbers are real. Essentially, I'm on the honor system from now on, and I'm just going to have to ask you to trust me. I trust you guys to give me honest feedback, and I hope that you can trust me to be honest about the feedback I get. Alright, other me, I've said my bit. Now the rest is up to you. Are you going to throw out your old self and be a stock analyst in a suit? I guess not. This sure is a lot to think about. So what am I going to do with this outfit, then? Wait a minute, I know.
Stop.